muted.
But we also, there is a little, in your GoToMeeting panel, you have the option to raise your hand. Everyone is muted right now just so we don't hear any of the background noise and all of that jazz. But if at any point you have any questions, please either type them into the chat box or raise your hand. You can feel free to type questions as we go along, and we'll have a good chunk of time for a Q&A and can talk through anything that you might need. So please use that. And additionally, we do have handouts available. There's a new feature in GoToMeeting, which we're very excited about. But you can download the slides from today's webinar as well as the data manual. So feel free to open that up and use that as we go along. So here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to do a quick overview of who we are as your anchor partner. Introduce the portal for those of you who are new to HOPP. Go over just expectations and do a quick review of the data points, and then how to report on those data points, and then talk about your deliverables. Okay, so the first thing is you may have heard about Employer Justice from your regional coordinators, but just as a welcome to who we are as an entity, we are a statewide multi-issue, multi-strategy public interest law firm who takes a three-prong approach to changing the systems within which poor and low-income families live. So we teach the law. We try to build community across the state, or we do build community across the state. We serve as a clearinghouse, and we provide resources and just an information hub for advocates. And we provide legal training, backup support, and technical assistance to these agencies to build to strengthen your skills when you serve your clients. We improve the law. We do that at a statewide level in the legislative. We have a fantastic policy team, and we engage in system change advocacy and use legislative, administrative, and judicial arenas to level the playing field to ensure the rights are protected and to literally change the systems that affect our clients and all of New Yorkers. And lastly, we practice the law. We are a law firm. We have offices. We have 4 offices across the state. As I mentioned, Becky, Shannon, and I are in Rochester, and Allie is in Long Island. Allie is in Albany. I was thinking Albany. And Maria is in Long Island. And then we also have a Westchester office. So we are spread out, and we provide a large array of legal services, direct legal services in each of those offices. So that's just a quick snapshot as who we are as Employer Justice. And we're also lucky enough to be your anchor partner. Here's just a quick snapshot of our team. You've all probably have at least met or heard from Kirsten Keefe, who is our program director. And then
Alex, I want to interrupt. I don't think the PowerPoint is showing. It's not showing on my screen, and I see a couple of people have asked questions about it.
I'm sorry about that, guys.
There you go.
Okay. Sorry about that. Some technical hiccups this morning. Okay, so now that you can actually see what I'm talking about, here's just a quick snapshot of who our anchor partner team is. So Kirsten Keefe, as I mentioned, she's the program director. She's based out of Albany, and you probably have heard from her or will meet her in the future. As I mentioned, Becky and Ellie are two of our regional coordinators, and Maria DeJaneiro is our third in Long Island. We also have a MAP team who is under the anchor partner branch. You've probably heard from Jack Kelly, who is our New York State MAP coordinator, and today Shannon Switek is here as well. Now we're going to talk about the portal. For those of you who are new to HOPP, you will not have access to this. I know your regional coordinators have mentioned that we are waiting on a memorandum of agreement between the new grantees through the Bank of America and City grantees and the Attorney General's office. So once that MOA has been sent out and should be going out in upcoming weeks, it's a top priority at their office. you'll have access to the portal. So it just, again, and all of these additional resources that we talked through, but they're coming soon. But just to give you an idea of what to expect and how to access it once that's out there. So we're just waiting on MOA, and then you'll receive instructions on how to get in. So the HOPP online portal is a secured microsite, which is in our website, that is only accessible by HOPP grantees. It serves as just a resource hub for you and contains grant-related information, substantive resources. We'll also have trainings, upcoming and previously recorded trainings, which are quite, that will prompt you to log in. You'll have a username and it will bring you here. So this is the portal itself. You see we have resources, substantive and grant-related. You can see your anchor partner staff. It's good just to look around and see what's available. We're constantly updating it, so if you have anything that you would like to share that you think would be beneficial or what have you, just email us and we'll work on getting that information for you. You can also go to the training center and just see what's upcoming. Note, we will be sending regular emails from us about registering for upcoming training, so don't feel like you have to just go in here and check. We'll be communicating that to you as well. Can you show the legal services stuff? Oh, sorry. Oh, this one? Yeah. The one you just did. Yeah. Nope. So as I mentioned, we record all of our trainings, and they are right here. As you see, there are a lot. We are crafting an email right now which has all the information in their description, so you can just go in and view them as well. So just as a resource to you. So that will be coming soon. But as you see, we do a lot of webinars. Becky oversees our legal services training sector, but these are here for you as well.
And Alex, I just want to comment that although the new groups that use Counselor Max will probably try to work out some kind of training for the new groups, there is a recorded training on using HOPP data in the Counselor Max client management system. So that's in there too.
Yep, and once that MOA is signed, we will send all that information out. So you just can click on a button and bring you right there. Thanks, Allie. Another resource that is available to everyone right now that we wanted to make sure you're aware of is the web-based foreclosure guide. What this is, it's a web-based app that you're just going to go to that homepage and click on our button, but it's designed to help clients or homeowners decipher what stage they are in the foreclosure process and kind of walk them through what to expect or see where they're at.
Yeah, there's also a fillable answer and notice of appearance form in the resources section that with explicit instructions for homeowners who would like to file an answer or a notice of appearance.
That's it. Cool. So again, this is available to everyone right now, so feel free to use this as we move forward, and if you have any questions, again, feel free to contact us and we'll help you out. So now reporting. So under this grant, under the Bank of America City grant, we will have bi-monthly data reporting. This will be every 2 months. The first date, we'll talk about the end, but it will be December 10th, 2015. So mark that in your calendars. And this will be where you add new clients that are new to HOPP, and update services provided for existing clients. So under this grant, this is not just a one-time report on client, that kind of thing. This is where we're actually asking you to update your services provided to each client, and we'll go over that in a minute, but I just wanted to decipher that difference. And then additionally, there will be a narrative and financial report due every 6 months, so an interim and final, and those templates and information will be coming soon. So now we're going to start the overview for the data points. So why we need your data, this large abundance of data. So we are knee-deep in the data, and we are looking at a client's progression from intake to the date outcome or the date of case that you close the case. We're looking at the length of time, looking at trends, what banks or services are often most involved, are there any correlating violations, or who the violations are with, and looking for just different patterns and practices. One right now is the mods. What's going on with the mod process? How long is that taking? Are the services still asking for different documentation and whatnot? And just coming up with targeted approaches, and so the Attorney General can go at his level and take action as needed, which he's done in the past. So I just want to reiterate that we are really looking at I myself am in your data on a regular basis and working with the Attorney General's office to provide them with different stats. So we are using this. I know it's a lot of data, but it is going to great use. So before we get started, this is just the different types of information we collected for those of you who are new to HOPP. We're looking at demographic information, what the loan looks like, what services you're providing, and then what outcomes you're achieving for that client. So for those of you who have not seen it yet, I just want to show you this is the data manual. This will go over, again, this is available in that resource section in your little webinar pane. And this will literally walk through what is expected for each data point. So feel free to use this as we go along and just make notes and whatnot, but that is for your use. Okay, so the first section refers to the record information. Record information includes like the client ID. Now the client ID is on your data report. As we are able to track a client's progression, we are able to do so by that client ID. So that needs to remain the same on each and every data report. Okay, so that includes the format. So if a space, as for the example here, if there's a space between like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then just an accidental space got in there, our system will not be able to recognize that. We'll recognize that as a new client. So just make sure that you are keeping things consistent as you go forward. And if you have any questions on that, feel free to give me a call and we can talk it through. The HOPP ID, so for those of you who do not know, the Attorney General has a hotline, HOPP hotline, that's a mouthful, that is a tool for homeowners who are in need of assistance yet do not know where to go. So they can call this hotline and they will be connected to an advocate in their area. When they do that, they will get an 8-digit ID that they'll share with you, and this will go in that field. So just plop that number in there. And then lastly, this is the staff who are working with that client. So now just the demographic information. So we have 2 dates we ask you to report on, and this gets a little confusing, so bear with me. So the intake date is the date that the client first came to you, is actually the date that you open that case or open that client. This date will not change. So that is whether it's back in 2011, whether that was yesterday, that date will remain the same on every data report. Now the service date, this date will be updated as you continually report on that client throughout the duration of time. Let's say for the next data report, you work with a client on October 13th and then again on November 5th. You saw them twice. If that does happen, just report on the most recent date, November 5th. That's simple. Okay, and I know that's confusing. We can go over that if you have any questions. So next, as you'll see in your data manual, we have a series of prescribed values. So just select the values that best represent your client. Now, if your client declines to answer or you just don't have that information, that's okay, leave it blank. And that's kind of the whole mantra behind all this data. We recognize it's a lot of data, and we just want you to do your best. That's it. So we don't want you going down to the clerk's office and diving through all these different files to find something that find the date back in 1990. Don't worry about that. Just do your best. And then again, The same for this. We're just trying to get a picture of who resides in the home. So just provide the number of children, adults, and seniors who are there 4 or more nights per week. Income. So this is the estimated entire household income for the most recent year. So you can feel free to round up the nearest 5,000 if that's easiest, but that's that field. And again, credit score, if you collect it, great, but if not, don't go to extremes to get this information. For household type, again, select the prescribed values that best represent your client. For this field, we're trying to get a picture of what the household structure looks like. Is it a single female-headed household, or are they married with dependents, or is it a single adult? We're just trying to get a picture of that. So just select the best value that represents your client. Now property information. Now in each of these fields, you're just going to provide the house number and the street name where the home is. Note that the AG, we look for data based on zip code and counties. So please ensure that you complete both fields. Those are critical. So those must be filled out. So now loan information. So for the first batch of data points, D19 through D33, this refers to the loan at intake. So we're trying to get a snapshot of what that loan looked like when that client came to see you. So this information will not change, and this is like a one-time thing you'll need to fill out. So hopefully that will make it a little reprieve for you, but just as a one-time thing.
So keep in mind, if somebody walks in the door and they have fallen behind on their previously modified loan, what we're looking for is the information about that loan at that modified state. So not the origination.
So reason for distress. What happened? Why is the client in mortgage distress? So you can provide the primary and, if applicable, the secondary fields for that, and they're prescribed values that you can choose from. How many units are on the mortgage? And then lastly, the date of property purchase. And for this field, I just want to point out the format, the month and year. Please ensure that you do provide it in this format as opposed to like 22 years ago. The 22 years ago gets tricky on our end because we're trying to figure out from what point in time is that 22 years ago. So just make sure that it's in the month and year format. Okay, so oftentimes clients have a second lien. If that's the case, then just report that information in the secondary fields that end in 2. I'll show you this at the end of the webinar, but example, report the second mortgage's loan amount under loan amount 2. And that will go on for the remainder of the data of the reporting. You know, we're looking for what's the current loan origination date, what's the amount at origination, and again, the term. Please report that in a number of years as opposed to months, and then the loan owner type. So again, loan information at intake. So we're looking for the principal amount, whether or not it's fixed or armed, what's the rate, and then the total monthly payment, and that is PITI. So just include all of that, and then whether or not it's an interest-only loan. Again, now we're looking for the loan status. What's the status of the loan when they come to see you? Are they between 120 and 240 days late, and what have you? So just select one of the prescribed values as we move forward. And then, you know, pertaining to loan server, who is the current loan servicer? Any violations that were endured? And then whether or not the servicer changed during their last interaction. So again, if the servicer did change over a reporting period or your interaction with the client, just mark yes and then provide the new loan servicer. So we're also looking for the number of settlement conferences. Now, for this field, we're only looking for the number of settlement conferences within that reporting period. So make sure that you are updating this as you, over the course of the reporting periods, because our system will automatically calculate the total number of settlement conferences per that client. So just make sure it's per reporting period. And then we're looking for the date of the first settlement conference, and then whether or not a bad faith motion was filed for the client. So now services provided. So for this one, just provide the total number of service hours you provided to that client. This will be a cumulative number as opposed to the settlement conferences. So just provide that total number. And then report those hours as opposed to minutes. So just make sure that have to provide just the minutes. So if you are a counselor max agency, that's okay. We'll just have to work that piece out.
Should they leave it as minutes, or should they change it?
We're going to talk about that in the counselor max webinar or whatnot.
Okay.
So I don't want, yeah.
Okay.
And then for services provided, just report the most significant services provided to the client during that reporting period. No, it may not report to that service date. As you may remember, if there are 2 service dates within the reporting period, we asked you to report on the most recent. Note that these services do not have to correspond with that date. We also want you to take note of supplementary fields. What I mean by that is you'll see this chart is available in the portal. But on your reporting manual, you see all these different service values, and some of them have supplemental fields that need to be filled out. So let's say, for example, you assisted a client with relocation. In the new house field, you just need to report the client's new residence information, where they're residing now. So just take stock of this, because these need to be completed as well.
Did you want to save questions for the end? We have a question.
Reporting, yeah, you can answer that one really quick. For the hours, yes, you can enter 1.25 hours, Kathy. Absolutely. We had a question pertaining to how to report those service hours. Let me go back. And the format for that, 1.2 hours is perfect. Now, for our partners servicing Superstorm Sandy victims, please report on the services provided relating to Sandy in those fields. Now, for a modification request, this field must be updated every time the status of the modification changes. Okay, and just take note that this field must correlate to the outcome reported. What I mean by that is if a client did not qualify for a modification was reported on, yet in the outcome field there was mortgage modified, something is wonky there. So just take note that you are updating both fields. And again, if you received a final modification, make sure you're reporting that as an outcome as well, because that is a foreclosure prevented. So just make sure you're doing both. And consequently, outcomes. So just take note that you are not expected to fill out this field until you have achieved one of the milestones or outcomes listed. Note you can report on more than one outcome over the life of your representation of the client, yet they are not weighed. You do not need to prioritize the value. And if you do not have a milestone or outcome during the reporting period, you can go ahead and leave that blank. And again, the outcomes have supplemental reporting fields as well. So just take note of these, and this is available in the
Alex?
Yes.
One thing I want to point out about the outcome is you also want to make sure that you don't put in the outcome field client outcome unknown, because that would indicate to us that you've potentially closed that client without knowing an outcome. So it kind of goes against the grain for housing counselors, because housing counselors are generally expected by HUD and other funders to always provide some kind of outcome every time a report is submitted, but we don't want that. So just, it's okay for you to leave that blank. I just kind of want to double up on that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Alex. Perfect. So again, as like similar to the client outcome unknown, several of these fields have those supplemental fields as well. So like Ellie mentioned, the client outcome unknown, if you do select that value, then note that the case closed field must have a date in it as well. And that's kind of the grain. So please just take note of all of these, and these are just all of the outcomes. So if you have a more modified mortgage, please complete all of the fields that pertain to that new mortgage. So what's the new principal? What's the new term? Again, in years, not months. What type of it is it? What's the new interest rate and the new monthly payment? And note that that should be reported for both trial and final modifications. And then we're also looking for the amount of principal forgiven and forbearance. For a short sale, what was the price and the date that happened, and whether or not the loan was fully forgiven. Deed in lieu, what was that date of action, any cash benefits, and as we talked about before, the new housing, where is the client now, if that field is applicable. Please, for that field, just select one of the prescribed values. So for when reporting the case closure date, just note that you have to have an outcome reported on, even if it's the client outcome unknown. Just make sure that there is an outcome in that field, outcome reported on. And then, as has been happening, if a client returns for services after you close their case, you must use that same client ID. We're really tracking whether or not what's going on with a client if they come back to you for services and why. So just make sure that you are using that same ID. And then when that happens, you'll just update their information using a new service date and deleting the case closure date. And our system will notify us that that client is returning for services, so don't worry about that. But just take note that you need to use the same ID.
Do they also have to use the same intake date? Or?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, everything else will remain the same on that line, just updating the service date and then deleting the case closure date. Any questions on the data points so far? Now we're going to dive into data reporting 101, but just want to pause for questions if anybody has anything. No, you can also raise your hand if you want to talk to us and speak, and we'll unmute your line. Okay. All right. Well, we're just going to dive into 101 on data reporting. So for all data points, a common question is what if the client doesn't know the information or does not want to answer? If that happens, all you're going to do is leave the data field blank. You don't have to write don't know or not applicable, what have you. Again, if you can easily obtain that information, that's great, but don't go to those extreme measures to collect the information. And further, just make sure that you are inserting the prescribed values and prescribed fields and allotted values. The spreadsheet has drop downs for those that have specific values, and just make sure you're using them. Now, further, I can't tell you how much we want to know what's going on with that client, and we appreciate that you want to explain to us why certain values are the way they are. But please just make sure that you are reporting them in the comments section as opposed to in that particular field. So when reporting new clients, you're just going to enter all of the available information. So the date of intake, what was the most significant service provided, and start reporting on the cumulative number of service hours since the beginning of the grant period. You can include clients with services covered by any portion of HOPP funding. We know this is a little different, but as long as they're covered partially by HOPP, you can report on them. And then note that one household equates to one client, whether or not, regardless of the number of people listed on that mortgage. So report on existing clients. So if you did work on that client during the reporting period, you must update their HOPP information to include the services provided. If you perform like multiple services with that client, just report on the most recent and or more significant service. Now, as often happens, I just want to note that let's say you forgot to report on a client that was served in a previous reporting period. What I mean by that is, let's say you served within the grant period. Let's say you forgot to report on somebody served in October, but we're on the February data reporting in February. If that happens, that's fine. Just let me know that you are including those clients in your data report, and just highlight them. But just let me know so I know to include them. Because what typically happens is we look at the service date, and only those clients that has a service date within the reporting period will be counted. So what I mean by that is for your first data report due in December, only clients with a service date between October 1st and November 30th will be counted. So that, again, that's why that service date is so important. But if you do forget to report on somebody, that's fine. Just let us know and highlight that client yellow or whatever colors, and we'll make sure they are counted. So, and also further, just make sure you review your data prior to submission. Just going through to make sure that there aren't any wonky fields or what have you, and just some common reporting mistakes. Just make sure you're looking at like the service field, ensuring that the loan terms are in years as opposed to months. Counseling hours are actually in hours. The most common one I see is the conference number. Just make sure that it's actually within the reporting period as opposed to a cumulative number. Now, when reporting on the servicer, make sure you're not using any acronyms. You know, because again, our anchor region is for rest of the state, and there are different services in each region, and they all have their own little acronyms or what have you. And it's very difficult for us to decipher who that is. So please just make sure that you are spelling out the entire name. And then for outcomes and services, just take note of those supplemental fields.
Can I add something about service date?
Of course.
So at one point there was an issue with when you're pulling your report. I know some of the programs complicate this a little bit, but when you pull your report, if you have a service date, let's say it's February 10th, and the service period is December and January, and you touched that file and you had a service date of February 8th, right? Because that's when you pulled the report. Frequently what will happen is it will show a service date of February 8th. What you need to do is manually go back in there and change the date so that it reflects the report period. So the date would essentially reflect a date in January. Even though we recognize that many of these clients you're touching, some of them on a multiple daily basis. But try to make sure that you are listing a service date that is within the grant period, which means you need to tweak that potential 10-day period.
Yeah, I think that's primarily an issue with Counselor Max, so just take note of that, Counselor Max users, that is happening, and make sure that you are updating those clients as you go forward. And then further, just one last thing, for the data points that contain new in the title, like if the loan was modified or what have you, make sure you are actually providing the information in those fields and not saying same, writing same, bless you. If, like, for example, the loan term actually remain the same from the original loan to the modified loan, make sure you are just providing that information again under the new header. Again, we talked about this, but make sure you're providing any exclamations in the comments field. And further, the client does not have to be officially closed in your case management system in order for you to close them with HOPP. Okay? Foreclosure, and then foreclosure prevented did not equate to a case closed date, having the case being closed, and vice versa. And we'll go over, for those new to HOPP, what constitutes as a foreclosure prevented in a couple of minutes. And then further, listing a, we talked about this earlier, but listing a modification status of final mod, received and accepted, does not equate to a foreclosure prevented. That needs to also be reported on in the outcome field. So just make note of that. That happens often, and we want to make sure that you're getting the most credit as possible. So just take note of that.
So on a side note, there's also, Alex will on occasion send out a summary report, which lists what we believe, based upon your data report and your scope of services, what we believe you have promised in terms of clients served and foreclosures prevented. And please look at those numbers, because frankly, that's the numbers that your regional coordinator is looking at. That's the set of numbers that the AG is basing decisions upon. If those numbers don't match what you believe they should say, call us and let's make sure that the data report is reflecting what you wanted it to reflect. Our expectation is that you are all doing, you were selected because we believe strongly in the quality of the work that you do. We don't have any expectations. We're not trying to do a gotcha on you. So when you don't meet those numbers, our expectation is that there's something goofy going on in your data report. So please, if you keep track of that internally and make sure that we are getting it right as well.
And we're happy to work with you if our numbers are off. Again, we want to make sure that we are counting everybody. As Becky said, we want to make sure you're getting all the due credit for all of your hard work. So we're happy to work with you. I'm happy to, if you ever need it, send you a list of the client IDs that we have on file that have been counted. But we will work with you on that front. So take note of that. So as we mentioned, your first data report will be due on December 10th, 2015, and more information on that will be coming soon.
So yes, we do have a few questions. Where would you input MAP funds received?
Great question. Do you want to give a quick update on MAP and whatnot?
Sure, everyone. This is Shannon, New York State MAP Assistant. So quick update. For those of you that don't know, at this point, based on the current pipeline, we expect that intake will close at the end of September. But as we learn more information, we promise we will pass it along to you.
So I apologize for making everyone dizzy. But if you were reporting on a case with MAP funds, thank you, Shannon. Sure. You will select this field, homeowner obtained private loan grant funds. This is what you would select.
So that includes not just MAP funds. There are some regions of the state that have access, not all, but some regions that have access to other maybe city grants or county grants or some small credit union that offers something. But so any of those, we have a separate way to keep track of who's getting MAP funds. This is not our primary vehicle to keep track of MAP recipients. So we're not as concerned about, counting widgets through of MAP through this program. This is more of what generally is out there that people are getting access to.
Great. Next question. Cumulative number of hours. Do we keep track of that and add one report period hours to the past report period hours, or just for that period?
For the service hours, that is a cumulative number. So that one you will just update. Let's say you served in the upcoming, let's say you have 20 clients and 20 clients, 20 hours historically through this program, and then within one service period you have additional 5 hours. You would report on 25 hours on your data report. That's a cumulative number.
So we expect, we typically see some pretty high numbers. When you're closing out a case, those numbers of hours are racking up. And we're looking to see how they're racking up.
Mm-hmm. So, and another thing to point out about that, if you are starting to report to us, of course, for the first time starting October 1st of this year, and you may have been seeing Mary Jones since July 1st of 2013, and you have a service date during October or November, your intake date that you're going to list on your report is still going to be that January 2013 date. Your service date is going to be within October or November, and your cumulative hours are going to be back to January 1st of 2013.
Right. Perfect. All right.
And one more question. Will we ever get a report card on the results from the report?
The summary figures? Yes. We're actually working on those right now for the last data reporting period, and that will be coming in the next week or so.
So it's not a report card. It's more of just an analysis.
Yes,
sure.
Of
a
snapshot of what you've just your clients provided and those foreclosures prevented.
Right. So it'll include percent completed of your total deliverables.
Yes.
And so, and if there are concerns, your regional coordinators are keeping track of those numbers and trying to make sure that we're all maintaining strong relationships with you, so that if something happens along the way, let's say you lose a counselor along the way, contact us immediately and give us a heads up so we know what's going on and keep us in the loop on the progress of that. If you start to identify some trends, if you start to see that less clients are walking in the door or more clients are walking in the door than you had anticipated, give us a call and let's talk through what makes sense for your agency and for your region.
And the other thing is, I'll say, if the question happens to be regarding kind of a statewide report card, not just an individual group or organization report card, but a statewide report card on HOPP in general. Last year, the Attorney General released that report that was released actually at the CXHE conference in September last year. And then recently, he released another report for what's been going on in the past year, and that report was released via a couple of different press releases over the summer, and it will also be discussed, and copies will be made available at the CXHE conference on September 21st, just to get a plug in there for the conference. But that, if that's what's being asked about, that's the other way that the AG is kind of putting out a report card on what the groups have been doing.
Perfect. Thanks, Ellie.
Great. And we have another question. My understanding was that we are only supposed to report counseling hours, not hours spent doing other work like assessments, application prep, or lender follow-up. Is this correct?
No, we want to know everything you're doing.
Yeah, anytime, any work that you're doing that's relating to that client, to that homeowner, that all counts. All of that, we consider that all of it is counselor time. So part of the value of the profession is your ability to communicate effectively with the lender and to translate between what your homeowner needs and what the lender needs. And so that's a critical component to the job, and we want to keep track of that time.
Awesome. Thanks, Becky.
Great. Now we have another question. Outcomes for tenants in foreclosed properties. Should we continue to report as we have been? Outcomes include relocation assistance, informed of rights, assisted tenant with purchase options, mediated in eviction court, etc.
So there's only a few groups across the state that are actually working with tenants who are in a property that's in danger of foreclosure or who are living in a property that's already been foreclosed. So there is a special report for that. I don't believe that any of the, I may be wrong, but I don't believe any of the groups that applied for this current round of funding have applied for tenants, to work with tenants at all. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that there have been any. But in general, there is a special report. And so in answer to that question, yes. Yes, you can continue to report on them and use the same form that's been being used for the last 3 years. I hope that answers the question.
If you have questions about that, or if you believe that you can serve tenants but you haven't been filling out a special form, contact your regional coordinator right away.
Great, we're all set. All right. So now we're just going to do a quick overview of the grant deliverables. So we talked about this briefly, but just as a more formal setting. So we are essentially tracking your progress against proposed deliverables. So clients served, that is the number of unique clients served by your organization. So again, the number of those unique client IDs. So that's why I got another reason why those are so important. So we're looking at that unique number and tracking that as well.
And if I can add, as a manager, as a former manager of a direct services group, that always made me nervous because we would have a number of folks that would come back to us. And if you find that that's happening, and as a result you find that you're not meeting your deliverables, contact us, contact your regional coordinator, and let us know. At the end of the day, what we're looking for is, what is the impact of the work that you're doing? And we're not interested in being widget counters, right? At the end of the day, we're looking for what's the impact on your communities and your neighborhoods and your homeowners. And so if you find that you have a number of people that, but for the fact that you had one client that came back to you, 3 times, or several clients that came back to you 3 times, that any other kind of work that you're doing would have included 5 different clients, but because you have that one person coming back to you, can't serve 5 people, let us know so that we can identify that as an internal nugget that we can take up the chain if somebody raises questions. I know that the regional coordinators strongly believe that we are advocates for you. And so give us the tools and the arguments and the facts so that we can make the case on your behalf and in support of you. So communicate with us, please.
We're here for you just across the board, so absolutely. So foreclosure prevented. So what this means is achieving one of the following final client outcomes. So there's this list. This was on your scope of services and is available in the portal as well that you can print out. So any one of these outcomes constitute as a final foreclosure prevented. Note that for mortgage modified, mods that are in a trial period are not considered a foreclosure prevented. It is not a final outcome. Only final mods that have been received and accepted are classified as a foreclosure prevented. Okay, and you may, even though you may have 1 or 2 or more of these outcomes per client, that only constitutes as 1 foreclosure prevented per client. Hope that makes sense. Okay. And as Becky and Ellie have mentioned, if at any time you feel that your organization is underperforming and you may not be able to achieve your projected deliverables, contact your regional coordinator. They're here for you, and they'll help you out. So make sure you're doing that.
And on the flip side, if you feel like you're overwhelmed with the need, which many folks are, and you are finding that you can't serve everybody that's coming in your door, the purpose of this is for you to keep your doors open for your community. And so contact your regional coordinator on the flip side of the underperforming. If you feel like you're kind of overperforming and you're going to have to close intake, that's not what we're looking for either. So please contact us on either side.
And as a whole, just piggybacking on what Becky said, just take note that for this program, this is an entire year, right? For many of you, it started earlier, but I think the bulk of folks are starting on October 1st for the Bank of American City grants. Just take note that you are expected to provide services and keep intake open for the entire year. This is not, let's say you meet your clients in December, your 60 clients that you propose delivering. If that's the case, you cannot close intake. This is an entire year duration program, so just take note of that as well. And as data reporting, just moving on to the next piece, as this is a lot of information, we do offer several series of trainings. We are here for one-on-one trainings with your organization or for certain just advocates who want to learn more. Contact me and we will set up a time and kind of walk through individually with your organization. So happy to do that. And then as the spreadsheet is in Microsoft Excel, we have some tips and tricks for you that can make your life a little easier when reviewing the data and inputting it. So just contact us and we are happy to help you.
And that's an ongoing offer. So yes. After you have completed your December 10th data report and you have thought, now this is fine, this is no problem, this is easy, and then come December 8th and you're cursing all of us, you are welcome to call us and we're happy to walk through the data at that point. So it's an open invitation, open offer.
Absolutely. And that's it. And here's just everyone's contact information. I know we have a couple questions coming in.
Yes, I think for the current hoppers need some clarification on the reporting dates. So we received a notification that a report is due in October. However, you have changed the reporting period to December 10th, which would cover July, August, September, October, and November. Question mark.
That is, I believe the bulk of folks are starting in intake from Bank of American City starting October 1st. If that is not the case, please contact your regional coordinator. But essentially, whenever you start services, the first data report will be due on December 10th.
What about previous?
But year 3, folks who are reporting on year 3, you have a data report due October 10th, or 13th, whichever it is. Yeah.
Right. So that is for July, August, and September. Sorry for the confusion on that.
All right. Next question. We receive clients from settlement conferences that do not provide all the necessary information. However, we follow up with them to encourage them to come on board, but do not. How do we count them?
Depends on what level of service you've provided. So if I'm a little unclear on the question, I guess. It depends, unfortunately, I think.
So I'm just going to, I think I know what is being asked here. So somebody gets referred to the counseling organization because they're involved with settlement conferences, and they get some very basic information about the homeowner, but then the homeowner doesn't ever really follow through. So what I would say is if you've had a referral from a settlement conference is not necessarily a service provided. But if you've had some level of contact with that borrower, then report on whatever level contact you had with that borrower. You might not ever know what the final outcome is, and then you would ultimately report that case is closed with outcome unknown. But if all you're getting is a referral with information, but you have not had contact with the homeowner, then it isn't really a service that you've provided. There's no service until you actually have contact with I don't know if that answers the question, but I think that's what's being asked. But you certainly can count them. If you've had interaction with them, you do provide the information to that, even if it was just once. Here's the one time we talked to that person, and here's what happened.
Awesome. Thanks, Ellie. Becky.
All right, next question. Why is private loan funds not considered a foreclosure prevented?
So I think for that one, and correct me if I'm wrong, ladies, but for private loan funds, it's not constituted as foreclosure prevented because we don't know if you achieve private loan funds, it may not be the entire amount that's needed in order to save that home. But if it is, you can use that in correlation and conjunction with another outcome, like homeownership preserved through other intervention, and tie it.
Brought mortgage current.
Yeah. Hope that answers your question.
Great. If we started processing clients beginning August 2015, is our first data report due December 10th?
Correct. For a bank, if you are new to Bank of America City or to this whole initiative, then yes. Yep. We do on December 10th. Does anyone else have any more questions? We have a couple of minutes left.
You can also raise your hand and I can unmute you if you'd rather speak.
Okay. Well, if you have any questions after you digest all of this information, which we recognize is a lot, your regional coordinators, any member of the HOPP Anchor team, and we will get that question answered for you. Again, for the new folks, welcome. We're really excited to have you on board and look forward to working with you. We can stay on the line for a couple more minutes just in case folks have questions, but for everyone else, feel free to hop off. Thanks again for joining us.